Welcome to The Healthy Hustle, hosted by us. Our hope for this show is to create something we didn't have during the come up. A community that supports a balance of growth and feel good, rush and recharge. The magic is in the dichotomy. And holy smokes, did it take us a long time to figure that out. Learn from our missteps, grow with our advice, because the work doesn't have to hurt. This is The Healthy Hustle.
Welcome to our debut episode of The Healthy Hustle. I'm Mandy Boles.
And I'm Maribeth Dodd, and we are so excited. This is finally coming to fruition. Mandy, we've been talking about this for a while, so this is really exciting. We're finally here. We're doing it.
We are doing it. I feel like this always has made sense, right?
Yeah, I think it makes absolute sense. Both of us have had many years now of experience in career and family and health and all of the things. And it's really exciting to get to sit on this couch together and talk about it.
We've lived through lots and we've thrived through lots. I feel like we get to help empower other women to be able to see that they can still have the hustle, but it doesn't have to look the same that it did before. So I know we talk a lot about women. That's been our primary audience, but I can personally say I've learned so many of my skills from male bosses and female bosses, right? So I think pulling strengths from different people that I've had, whether they're male or female, I think that's what, we're taking our learnings and our skills and passing them along from both men and women alike. And I think that's something that our listeners can be both men and women being able to learn and glean from some of the best.
Yeah. And I would say some of my favorite podcasts that I'm faithful to listen to are guys.
Totally.
So I think that there's something to learn on both sides. And especially I think about just some of our background and getting to be in roles where it's heavy sales, it's high stakes. I know there's a lot of both men and women that will identify with that.
How did y'all end up right where you are right now?
Wow, that's a loaded question, I would say.
Completely. Yeah, I feel like for me, this has been a journey that's almost been 2 decades in the making.
That's a long time. That's a really long time. I mean, if you want to take it way back, I do think about every report card I ever had that said talks too much.
Oh, I got those too.
Did you?
Yes. Yes. The S's and the N's.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got N's for talking too much. That would be me.
Yeah, I know. I do feel like I was the one that would get caught,
Always.
I remember getting caught with a note, actually, one time. We were passing it back and forth. And of course, it was when I wrote the last comment that I got busted.
Of course.
So.
Yes. It's like genetic in my family. We're all loud. And I cannot whisper. And I always wanted to be a talk show host or an entertainment news reporter.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
I love it. This is
fun.
a chance to talk then.
Yeah.
You can talk as loud as you want.
As much as I want?
Yeah.
And all the details, is that true?
Keep it coming. All right, so should we talk about what we're really
how
doing
did we get here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, I feel like for me, I kind of grew up in the industry that I've always worked in, but I felt like I happened on it by complete accident. I was like a young mom. I felt really lucky to have gotten the job that I got, but I didn't know it would turn into a passion project. I really quickly fell in love with what I did because I got to help women. I got to see women's confidence transform and see women change their lives. And then it just became a purpose. I was in a job. My degree was in public relations. I had a baby at 22. And so I didn't get to do public relations because they wanted to do a year of unpaid work before they would ever hire you at a PR firm. So I worked at the bank that I'd worked at in college. I was miserable. So then I went to be, client services manager at a VIP healthcare company, and I was miserable. I wonder if I could say that. I don't want them to come back and sue me.
No one's going to sue.
Nobody's going to sue me. And it was hard, it was the type of a job where you could literally get your paycheck but not get a break to walk across the street and take your paycheck to the bank type of thing. And then I took my first personal day. I'll never forget this. I took my very first sick day, and it was because my 10-month-old was on breathing treatments. And then the next day, the CEO of that company pulled me into his office and he said, the next time your kid's sick, you need to take him to sick childcare. And I'm like, wait a second, what? Isn't that what sick days are for? And he's like, well, no, next time your kid's sick, you need to take sick childcare. And so he had the yellow pages of the Indianapolis phone book out, and he said, here, I found one for you. And it was in a really unsafe area in the city of Indianapolis, which is even further from my home. And I thought at that point, nobody is ever going to tell me that I can't take a sick day to take care of my sick kid. Like, I would never be told that again. And so I became very much on a mission to find something different. And I had heard someone at that point, I was looking for an extra income opportunity. I thought I might, sell Mary Kay. And it was one of those things where they wanted me to, have this big inventory in this party. And I was like 2 hours away from my family. I knew nobody would come. And so I'm like, what else can I do? And then I thought maybe I could do Avon, because at the time they had a Mark Magalog. It's similar to Mac. It was really cute and trendy. And I never actually got signed up to sell it. But when I was talking to a lady that I knew who was a corporate employee of Avon, she was telling me all about her job and how amazing it was. And I was like, wow, she really likes her job. Like, that sounds like the most perfect job. And she said, you'd be really good at this, but they usually don't hire people under 30. And so when I was in that moment of desperation, I remembered how much she loved her job. I got on monster.com, and wouldn't you know it, there was a district manager position open for a district sales manager at Avon. So it was like a Hail Mary, because I was so young. Like, I really did not have a resume at that point in time. And I literally felt like a quarterback throwing, that Hail Mary into the end zone when there's like a second left on the clock. And they called me. And then I had an interview, and then it was like 3 months later, and I actually had taken another position, and they called me back and they said, would you consider moving forward? And I said, I just took another position. I'm so sorry. 3 days later, they called me back again, and they said, would you reconsider? I said, well, if you could tell me that I'll have the job, then I will reconsider. And they're like, yes, as long as you pass the personality test. And so I did. And somebody gave me a chance when I was 24. And then it took me a couple years to even really figure like I knew what I was doing with that job. And then once I figured it out, because I had someone that was really a huge influence on me, then I started having sustainable repeat, snowball type of growth. And then I was promoted, and then I would go, fly across the country and teach other new district managers how to go out and do their job and work with the field of Avon representatives. And then, I became a division manager overseeing about 60 million in sales and about 10,000 Avon representatives that were in the area. So, and I kind of worked myself up to a position that, very few people under 30 had. And that was like my ultimate goal. And then I realized that at one point, like, family was super important to me. I was the traveling mom. I was always gone. I was having women that were twice my age that were reporting to me, but it was not a matter, it became a moment of not wanting to chase titles and positions anymore, and just being that present mom that I'd never really got to be for my kids. So then I decided to go and, build my own business as an entrepreneur. And I was able to replace my income in about 5 months. And then I just realized, like, wow, like, this is really cool to get to be that mom that I never had an opportunity to be. So
that's awesome. Well, and I think that's always a hard decision when you've had a lot of success. Because
totally.
How old were you when you got that promotion that nobody had under 30? Weren't you like early,
like
mid-20s? 28.
28.
So that's incredible. It's like you had a chance to prove you could do it.
Yeah.
And then you started to sort of reframe things, right? And put it in a perspective of the rest of life.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So after you built your own business, kind of what happened next?
So I actually built my own business, and ultimately the reason why I kind of stepped away from like that career that I loved was so much of what brought me here today. I had 2 little boys at home. They were 3 and 5, and they then became like 5 and 7. They kept growing, and I was with a company that was going through lots of restructures, and I kept making it through the restructures. And I remember working from home one day, and my 3rd grader came home, and he was just sad. And, I was just like, what's wrong, bud? And he was like, well, I go to school and I think about how my friends get to go home and see their moms and I don't. So that was the moment that changed me. That was the moment for me that was like, gosh, you don't need to be that mom chasing titles and goals. And, you need to be present with your kids. And that was the shift. And so I said, I love you more than I love my job. Just give me a little bit of time. And so I had some doors that kept opening. And then I found myself with an opportunity to step away from a career that I thought I would retire in, And so then after that, a couple of other positions, and I actually passed on one, and I decided to just build my own business. And so that was when I did that. I did it for about 7 months. And my third grader that I had referenced at the time, he was 11, and I'd replaced my income. Things were great. I was looking at that first summer of being like the work from home mom. You know, I was going to be working at home with 2 little boys and all the chaos. Like, how am I going to manage this? And my son was at a friend's house, and he was in an accident, and we lost him. And he didn't come home to us that day. And it was a moment that just changed us forever. And I just thought, why? Like, why did this happen? You know, how come this had to happen to us? I'd just gotten to be the mom that I'd always been. Like, I'd seen him off to school every day, did things after school every single day with the boys. You know, my phone was away until they went to bed. And I was just that mom that I'd never been. And I realized right then and there that the gift of time is a currency that cannot be replaced. You can't make more of it. You'll never get it back. And so for me, time freedom was the ultimate. So no matter what you had to do to have an achievement or a title was never worth that time sacrifice. So it was just such a turning point where I knew I would never do the same things the same way because it wasn't worth it in the aspect of time. And so all of those experiences, you know, just kind of came full force, and then it just became about how can I be the best I can be now, but also still be an example for my living child, because you have 2 choices when something happens. You can move forward or you can lay down and die, and you have to keep living for the living, right? And so that's what we chose to do, and just always be there for our living son. And then that was just the thing for me that really hit me the hardest was you can never get back time. So just that's kind of where
Yeah. Well, you're amazing. You're such a great example of like going forward. And like you said, you have to make a choice at that point, right? It's like, do I just stop living or do I keep living?
Yeah.
And you've done exactly that. And it's cool to see, or just to know, because I know you, that you were fighting for those boys long before you ever made the change. You know, it's like we do the best we can. And I think that's part of why we're here, is because we want that for ourselves. We want that for other women. Because most of us do need to bring in an income. Most of us do have, if you're listening to this, you probably have some drive in you that doesn't allow you to not go after something, you know? And so it's like, how do we really lead and show our kids what that looks like, and do it in a way that still allows us to keep priorities, you know?
For sure. Right. I think for me, that was everything, you know, being an entrepreneur at that point in time, that's what I had been. I'd replaced my income. And then at that point, my husband was traveling for work all the time. He was actually supposed to be in Canada the day the accident happened. And he just couldn't go back to doing what he had done. And so we knew that my business had the opportunity to keep growing. And so we just made this joint decision that we would, you know, replace his income with my business. We did that in 6 and 7 months. I think it was about 7 months later, we replaced his income too. And then we were able to just be that stay-at-home entrepreneur family that was there. We didn't miss a moment. You know, in the thick of all that, we just decided to see if we're supposed to have another one. And she came along almost 6 years ago. So
well, can we talk about how we met?
Yeah, let's
right
talk
before
about how
that.
we met.
Okay, so we met over salads. I remember a frothy monkey was the first time we got to meet in person. And just kind of crossed paths. And I was like, first of all, loved hearing your story. And I didn't know your story before we sat down, and you were so gracious to just kind of tell me like your career experience, what had just recently happened with your family. I think it was months before, right?
It was.
That you lost your son. And I just remember talking about like, you were processing, like, should we have another kid? Should we not? I don't know.
Right.
And I remember saying, I'm going to pray that you have a little girl.
And I'm like, oh,
do you remember
shoot.
this?
Yes. I'm like, oh, crap. I don't know if I want her to pray for this or not. Am I supposed to have this or not? And then like 3 months later, I was pregnant.
Yes. Yes.
So true story.
And what a great blessing, and just like, little spitfire you have.
Oh,
She's
she
awesome.
is. I say that she'll run the world one day if she wants to.
Yeah.
I love her.
Does she get talks too much on the report card? Or we don't know yet?
That's what she's getting dojo strikes for. No, I'm kidding. No, I don't think she's gotten a dojo strike yet.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure she talks too much because she does not stop.
I love it.
Yes.
She's so great.
She's so fun.
Well, okay. You have really like, obviously it's been proven with your career, just the ability that you have to explode a company and to grow something. And I feel like it's really neat that that showed up so early. Like you just thinking, oh, I just got this job, that ended up turning into this passion where you're not only able to like encourage many thousands of women in what they're doing and helping them to like exponentially grow their incomes and some of that. But now I would say you are like known as someone who's an expert that people want to bring in, you know, to expand business or to recover, you know, sometimes if sales are down. And just so like talk a little bit about more recent years and how you've used that expertise.
So it goes back to when I started in my career. I saw, you know, when a company was in struggle, so often it had to do with mindset. And I feel like everything we do has to do with mindset. You know, it was usually someone's belief or mentality that, you know, things are just not the same anymore. And so I quickly saw, and I'm thankful that I had mentors that said, you know, just because it's been done the same way doesn't mean that's what's going to grow going forward. So I learned that so early. And so I just learned to not do things the way they've always been done and always try to be innovative. I think there's always fundamentals, but how do you take the fundamentals and make them work as the landscape evolves? So I feel like I was blessed to come into my career and learn how to be a change agent early on. And so that's what I was known for in my first company, was being a change agent, delivering change, orchestrating structure changes, and really finding ways to grow through struggle. And then you can just take that, and it's the mindset and the belief that you take wherever you go, and just always being ahead of the trends, seeing what's going on, seeing what's, you know, what the needs are and how to tweak and evolve around it, and grow with it. You know, I built my own business out of my comfort zone. I was building a business on digital and I had no digital experience. And I think it's just deciding you're going to do something and then following through with execution. It's so much of it, and just really believing and knowing that you can make that difference and not accepting things for what they look like on paper. I think I've always just kind of had that overcoming mindset early on. Back, I remember like I liked to run hurdles, and that was my thing. I remember, like, you know, I fell in a big race one time and I got up and I finished and I won the race. Like, no, you're not going to lose, right? But I think too, it's easy to be complacent in a career, and you can accept the noise. And then you can also see, like, is that really where I want to be? Is that really going to get me where I want to go? And then also knowing, like, nobody's coming to save us. And I think, you know, also always having that person that has influence that we can really relate to. I think there's always somebody that we can always say, that person changed my life. And I can think of somebody that came in and her influence changed my life. Like, somebody gave me a chance. You know, when I was young and I was hired into this company that didn't hire people under 30, I was hired by somebody that gave me an opportunity. And no reason to give me an opportunity, and somebody gave it to me. And then I had someone come along and she saw something in me and just really helped me see outside of the box, like that you could do things differently, that you could be different. You didn't have to do things the way they'd always been done before. And so having someone to really aspire to be that had a lot of influence, I think just helped me be bold and confident that I could do things when others weren't, right? So I feel like her influence drastically changed. I wouldn't be sitting here today if it hadn't been for her.
Wow.
Yeah. I think it just fits my personality. I always have to have something ahead of me that's next. You know, it's like there were several girls that would beat me in a 100-meter dash, and I could beat them all in the hurdles, because it was always like the thrill of the next obstacle and how you could not just get through it, but how you could overcome it.
Which is like foreshadowing to your whole life.
Isn't it?
Well, and I think the ease with which you talk about, like, oh, I just see potential in people, or we don't have to do it the way we did before. Like, that comes like right out of you, which is awesome, because it's like a superpower. You know, a lot of people are like, how do I do that? And it's like, you just showed up seeing through that lens, which is really cool. And then applied it, you know, throughout life. And I'm sure it's evolved with everything you've been through and every company you've been with. And
And I've never been one that just feels like you have to meet the corporate standard, right? I feel like there's people, I think authenticity is a huge piece of that. And who you are should come through with everything you do, whether it's in business, if you meet somebody at a store, your presence on social media. Like my goal is for people never to meet me and be like, gosh, I did not expect her to be that way. You know, I want everybody to say that's how I expected her to be.
And she's even cuter in person than in the photos.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit.
Okay.
With something you probably hate, but that is just share a little bit more about your success, some of your accomplishments, like some of why you're so sought after.
Okay. Well, that is tough. So the first company that I was with for about 10 years. And, you know, through different roles, I was able to lead top 1% teams in the country. And I think that's ultimately what kept getting me the next promotion and then the next promotion, and to a point where I didn't want any of the promotions because I wanted to be a mom, right? And so then when I was an entrepreneur, the company that I was with, I was a global top 200 income earner for that company. And just, I think over the time in my career, just impacted thousands of women. I think leading people in corporate, whether they're salaried employees or leading women who are able to make their income as an entrepreneur or a side income for their family as an entrepreneur. I think that's just been the sweet spot, is being able to help women. And helping women for me isn't about a results of performance. It's how they feel their work fits into their life, because I think that's so often the foundation of where somebody is either going to thrive or they're going to be miserable, right? Mm-hmm. Like if somebody isn't loving and if it's not working in alignment with their home and their life and their family, then helping people see what that missing link is. And it's a people business. Whatever we do, I think if you keep people at the core of it, that's when you have the success, right? The numbers will come from keeping people priority. Mm-hmm. And so after that, you know, I came back into corporate. I wasn't looking to come back into corporate. I had an old boss of mine. I'd worked for him a couple of times, and he was like, would you ever come back to corporate? And I'm like, you know, it'd be really hard to get me back into corporate because I know what I can do on my own, right? And, you know, when you feel like you can really make an impact and see an opportunity to be a part of something that's going to help even more, that had my attention. So I came back into corporate about 3.5 years ago. And, you know, again, just really leading growth in the markets that I was responsible for. And then when we work together, you know, it's just leading through growth that the company hasn't seen in 7 years. Mm-hmm.
400% in a quarter.
400% in a quarter. Yes. Just being able to lead through those things. And it's so funny because I don't like to track that. I am very intuitive with how I feel I base my performance off of. So it's really hard to sit and quantify it. Like when I have to put numbers on paper, I can. But for me, it's about the people that you feel like you make an impact with. Mm-hmm. Because numbers at the end of the day don't matter if you're not impacting people. Okay, so Maribeth, this is like so much about me. I can't keep talking about myself anymore. I'm sure we'll do plenty of that going forward. Let's talk about you. You've had such a colorful career.
That's one way to put it, Mandy. That is one way to put it.
Animated and colorful, and it's just been full of great moments for you. So tell us a little bit about where it all began.
Yeah. So I studied music and ministry. First part of my career was in full-time ministry. So just right out of college, remember I was 21 and I was signed up for graduate school, ready to go study more classical music, possibly go down the opera route. And a friend of mine said, hey, there's a church in Georgia that's looking for a worship pastor. Would you want to interview? And I remember thinking, this will be great. It'll be good practice. Like, there's no way I'm going to take this job. You know, I had a scholarship. I was all ready to go. And I decided to just take the phone interview and really liked them. And they were like, hey, can we fly you down? And I was like, okay. And so I fly down and it ends up being the easiest yes I ever said. It was just so obvious that was the next step for me. In another episode, we'll talk about more details of that, I'm sure, because that's how I met my husband and so many other things. But it was just this really obvious shift in a fork in the road where I called the graduate school and said, I'm not coming. You can give my scholarship to somebody else. And I took this position. And so I found myself very quickly going from being in college mode to, okay, you are in your career. And not only are you in your career, but you're in leadership, like from the beginning. And so just, I started with them at 22 then. And I remember having to, lead men and women that were well beyond my years, which is similar to your story, Mandy, that we were put in a place where it was like, okay, you got to lead these people that are more experienced than you. I remember one of the guys on my band was like a VP at his company by day. And then he had to show up and listen to this 22-year-old tell him how to play guitar, And so I feel like it thrust me into leadership, so quickly, but also it was so fulfilling and I loved it. And at the time I remember thinking, if no one paid me to do this, I'd still do it. Like, I just loved what I did so much. But met my husband, and he, who was previously in IT, kind of felt a pull to ministry too. And so we moved from Georgia to Arizona to both be on staff at a church out there. I remember Chris took a huge pay cut, like more than 50% of what his previous income was. Which was crazy and may have been okay for a little while. But once we were there for about 3 months, we found out we were pregnant with our first kid. And so it was just one of those things where it just set us on this path of like, okay, the budget's real tight, and I just remember like we had enough, but it was like barely enough. And life went on. We both, enjoyed being in our positions there and all of that, but we just kept having kids. So after I had my third son, it was like I got home immediately from the hospital and started to look for something else. I knew like that third set of diapers was going to put us over the edge and my nail money was going to be gone, So I started to look for something, and I came across something online that was in the health and wellness space that I thought, okay, I might be able to do this. And so I remember like just spending that money and ordering my startup kit and pulling out like these body wraps and these greens and these different supplements. And then I felt like, what did I get myself into? Like, I really didn't know. And especially the first time I like went into someone's home and was like putting this body wrap on their stomach. I was like, I never thought about this part at all. It was like, I was used to like singing and leading worship on stage. And all of a sudden I'm in somebody's, living room or bathroom or bedroom, putting this wrap on them, and figuring out what it was like to grow a business. It was so different than anything else I had ever done. Brought the idea to my husband, and he was like, there's no way that will work, but if you want to try it, I'll back you, I'll support you. And so I just remember jumping in with it. And I like to say I was accidentally successful because I had no idea what I was doing, but come to find out, when you start leadership very young and you learn a skill set of how to work with people and how to grow things, that thing might be a church, it might be a nonprofit, it might be a business, but you get the system down and then you do it, And so that was kind of what I did with my own organization. And so I kind of just jumped in, and within 4 months of paying that, like, I don't know, $150 or whatever it was to start that business, the business income surpassed not just my income, but both my and Chris's income. And it was such a fun, like, almost I told you so. I hate to say that because Chris was super supportive, but it was fun to show him I could do that. And one of my goals was I want to pass his income. Like, I want to show him that this is something that people can do, And before I knew it, first of all, it put our family back into like a 6-figure family income. We weren't even there at the time. But also, like, I had this organization just grew like wildfire, and I had over 3,000 people that were a part of this team that was thriving and growing and, traveling all over the place to talk about this product and finding ways to build online. And I don't know, it was just like, thinking back on it now, it's like, I can't believe how it happened. And it's like what you were talking about, like, just crazy things can happen when you just choose to do things a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly a stigma, like we talk about this a lot in the direct sales industry. There's parts of it that are ugly. There's things about it that I'm like, ooh, that's embarrassing. There's people who have done it really wrong. But for me in my life, it changed everything. And I got to see it change so many other people's lives too, and that was what was my turning point in career, that showed me that I could do something like that. And so I actually kind of started in business, building my own business, and did that for about 5.5 years. before that company asked me to go over on to the corporate side. So, about 100,000 distributors, and I felt completely blown away that they chose me and allowed me to step into that role where I was really getting to help grow the company and grow a lot of people's teams at that point, from a leadership perspective, from a business standpoint. And we saw some crazy things. I mean, we saw some like 200% growth quarters. We saw some things where it was like, this shouldn't be possible. But when you really are able to rally people and move a culture in a certain direction, like unbelievable things happen. We've both seen that in business for sure. So I was with that company for about 11 years, like a big chunk of my life. We had one more kid in there, so we now have 4 boys. So we had one more baby, and I was then the traveling mama that you described. I remember Tatum was 5 months old when I took the corporate position. And I took it with the contingency that they would let me travel with him. And so I had many, 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 flights with that baby. Many times, like I have pictures of myself, like standing in a bathroom, pumping, of course covered, but like standing there pumping, exhausted, baby on my hip, like getting ready to go speak on stage, like just making it happen because I needed this career to work for me. I wanted it to work for me, but I also wasn't willing to just like totally leave him behind, And I had some stories when I was building. So this is flip-flop. But when I was doing my own business, I had stories of our third son, Jonas. I missed his first birthday for an event that we had to, that I needed to be at. That was important. And then I missed his second birthday for a very similar event. And so like, needless to say, I don't miss that kid's birthday anymore. Yeah. I'm always home for that one. But I have like just deep wounds like that of times, choices that I made or needed to make that were really hard, in that realm of just like, we're constantly making these choices. Right. And I don't know like that I would even go back and change all of it or any of it. Like, I think it's good for the kids to see us like pushing and going after our passions and ultimately helping people. Because that's one thing I would say both of us have been able to do is we could make a list of really thousands of women that we've gotten to see grow in their incomes. I've helped people make much more money than I've ever made in my lifetime. Many, and it's like you see that and how that impacts them for generations. And it's like, it's pretty amazing. So I want my kids to see that too,
I love that. I love how your kids will always remember you as the mom who was willing to do what it took to show them what hard work and perseverance looks like. I can relate to you saying that you missed things. My son's a senior and I missed his first day of kindergarten, right? So I look back and I think, what the heck was I thinking? But for you, what was your turning point where you're thinking to yourself, I've done these things, but I'm going to go forward and I'm still going to be a total boss, but I'm going to do things differently?
I feel like for me, it was such a like slow evolution of realizing that. Mm-hmm. And like part of my story is I have worked for a lot of really difficult bosses. I've worked for some really narcissistic people. And I think sometimes this happens when you're like a really driven kind of high achiever personality, people love it. They love to see you coming because they know you're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Right. So I've had to learn over time and through a lot of heartache. And I'm sure we'll get into some of this in episodes, just different scenarios and things that we've walked through. But it's taken a lot for me to realize like, okay, I can do these things. I can be in this high achieving role or this really like there's huge growth, expectations and in this situation or whatever. But I have to set certain boundaries that sometimes put you at risk of that role, right? Or of hitting the growth that you need to hitting those KPIs. So it's, I feel like for me, it was, when you say turning point, it's been like a slow evolution and a lot of aha moments over and over and over to realize, and you've been along on this journey with me for some of the time where I'm like, what the heck? Like she can't say that to me or he can't say that to me. And realizing like the value that we bring into a room mm-hmm. and the leadership that we have, and just standing in it. Standing in that and figuring out a way to do it in the midst of the other things that are important. And so, I left kind of the corporate world. I guess it's been almost maybe 4-ish years ago, and really stepped into more consulting type roles and contracts, and very intentionally did that in part to have that flexibility that we talk about, and to just have a little more ownership over just what time looks like, you know. And now really my goal for the rest of my career is to spend time in my strengths. I just think of like some of the contracts I've had even over the last few years where it's like you get spending so much time in the weeds on things that are not making a difference. And I'm at the point in my career where I want to focus on the things that I can really make a difference with, you know, like my superpowers. Like, what are those things? That's how I want to spend my time, investing in growing something that's, you know, important, that will last.
Well, and I think you speak so much with so confidently and boldly with your experiences. And there's so much wisdom that you can bring to an organization and confidence that you can bring to women, right?
I love doing that.
You're so good
It's just,
at it.
well, thank you. I feel like it's just one of the best things. Just sometimes it's the tiniest comment, you know, that we can say to a woman. My husband actually, we were at a resort a couple years ago, and this woman walked in and she looked beautiful, gorgeous, like from her head to her toes, like beautiful outfit. You could tell she just really like worked hard on getting ready that day. But she also looked kind of like maybe snooty and like insecure. And I just was like, oh my gosh, you look beautiful. Like I said something, and my husband was like, I'm so glad you did that. It was really encouraging to her. And I was like, oh, it was? Like I was just in one of those moods where I just was going to, whatever I was thinking was going to come out. But he's like, yeah, like think about how that might have impacted her. And I was like, you're right. Like sometimes we can let our own insecurity get in the way of like, no, she just looks great. I got to tell her, you know? But when we do, it makes a difference. And we've seen the same thing in business, you know, as we've been able to encourage and spur women on too.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that, you know, you're in a place where you're looking and you're growing women and we're here. And I think that's something that we haven't really talked about a whole lot. We actually missed each other as coworkers when you first stepped into the corporate side of the direct sales business, because just a few months before that, I had passed on a position with that company to go build, which is what you were doing and then stepped into corporate from. But I feel like, you know, we found a way to be on the same path because here we are. We connected anyway.
Yep, we did.
So we've talked a ton about direct sales today, and I think that's not, you know, where all the roads have led. We've been involved in different things. You know, for me, I know I was a waitress, I was in banking and healthcare. I've been a part of fashion brands and food companies. And so I think that, you know, we have a wide knowledge of different industries between the two of us. I know you've got quite the portfolio.
Back to the colorful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think that we can speak to and connect with women from all different spaces, you know, in a lot of ways. You know, sometimes I share about my career that I went from, well, first ministry to health and wellness and, you know, supplements. And then I was in ice cream for a while and I consulted with a company that was, you know, hospitality, commercial real estate. Then I was in fashion, which was super fun. And then, you know, really back to consulting in health and wellness. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Immunotec, which we're both getting to do some work with right now. And we're just grateful that they've made this podcast come to life and they're sponsoring this.
I just really love that they're an innovative and forward-thinking company.
Yes, me too. And I think it makes me think of like why in part we're doing this podcast, because we want to think like forward-thinking people.
Yes.
As it relates, like we touched on a lot of topics today. You know, we talked about work, we talked about the balance with home, so many of those things. And we want to have health in all the areas, right? Not just, I mean, farther than what we've been able to talk about today, in every area of our life. And we don't have it quite right yet, but I think we haven't given up yet.
I think we've realized that it's not a luxury, right? I remember the days where I would thrive on 2 hours sleep. I could do 2 hours of sleep before having a staff meeting and I would thrive through it. And those days are gone.
Yep.
Long gone.
So speaking of the future, where do you see this show going? Like, what do we hope this will bring?
Community. I think women are craving community. I think they feel so alone. There's so many demands of the modern working mom, wife, even business lady, because there's so many things that are pulling at her every single day. And I think just knowing that they can still have success, they can still find a way, but they don't have to sacrifice all the things that maybe they used to when we were in this boss babe culture.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you nailed it. I think they need to know they're not alone, and if there's something in our, I don't know, combined 40 years of leadership experience.
Makes us sound so old.
I know, but if there's something in there, that we can share that would encourage them to get through another board meeting, through another day, I think that we'd love to provide that, and just bring our stories and our experiences and also some amazing guests that we'll be bringing on as well to share their stories. I think, us coming up with the idea of this podcast and we've been talking about it for a long time,
yes.
right? Dreaming what could come from something like this and how we might be able to help women, whether they're entrepreneurs or business women, just to do things better and to learn as we're learning. And it's amazing that when we started working with Immunotec, they really saw the vision for that. And I'm really grateful that they said, yes, this is something that we believe could make a difference in people's lives and move some things forward. And so we're just really grateful that they jumped on and they're supporting us in this. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. We're so excited to see where this is going to go. And we want this to be a two-way conversation. We want to invest in community. We're going to be taking questions, hearing from you, and interacting in that way. So we hope you'll hang with us. Make sure to like and subscribe and share this with somebody you think it would help.
See you next time.